So, hello and welcome everybody to our Around the World webinar series, specifically dedicated to PEP-CV today. Before we delve into the topic of our webinar, we just want to know how everybody is doing. So if you could launch the Mentimeter now, please scan this QR code, or you can also go to the website menti.com and press the type the code. And when you've scanned the QR code, you'll see a great visual of a couple of interesting quotes. And
in 1 second, let's let everybody join. You can give the
okay.
thumbs up to show that you've joined.
Yes. So we'll wait a couple of minutes because we have 64 participants here, so that everybody's on the same page.
The Menti link at the top that says join at Menti with the code will be present on every slide where this is present. So you'll always be able to jump in later. But if you want, we can move to the check-in.
Yep, let's do it. So you'll see you can take your cursor to whichever goat you resonate most with today. And once you've done that, you just click on it so that it's recorded.
This is very important data for analytics later.
We need to share this with our funders.
It's a good diversity of goats today.
I know. I am so glad to see some people at 3 and 4. I thought I was the only one.
I don't have a cursor because I'm running the Mentimeter, but I think I'm either an 8 or a 6 right now.
8 or a 6? Oh, that's a happy place to be in.
Yeah, I'm good. It's warm in here, but I'm doing fine.
That's cool. I'm aiming for 7 by tomorrow. 3.
Cool. I think we've checked in with a good diversity of goats.
Thanks, everyone. I think we can move on to our topic of discussion today. So welcome everybody again. Thank you so much for being here with us today. So today's webinar is going to be a part of the MCAA, which is Marie Curie Alumni Association. For those who don't know, we are a non-profit association for the alumni who had received their Marie Curie, so I can't ever pronounce the second name, so I'm going to skip it, Curie Actions Scholarship or Fellowship. We're about 22,000 members across the world, and PEP-CV, which is a peer exchange platform for narrative CV, is one of the initiatives that MCAA is leading with the support of many funding agencies, one of them being FNR. So today we're joined with Sean Sabcario from the Luxembourg National Research Fund. Hi, Sean. Thank you for being here. So as I mentioned earlier, today will be a very interactive webinar, so please feel free to put your questions in the Mentimeter, also on the chat. Before we delve in, I'd like to introduce Sean to everybody. Those who don't know, Sean is a program manager at the Luxembourg National Research Fund. He's responsible for the strategic programs and research culture initiatives. He has led the implementation of narrative CV templates across FNR funding programs and also co-produced videos with Dora guiding evaluators on responsible research assessment techniques. He has also been working alongside the Global Research Council Working Group on responsible research assessment, and also co-chairs the Science Europe Working Group on research culture. So very relevant to our topic today. And I'm sure, as like many of us here today, Sean also comes from a research background, and he conducted his PhD in biology at the University of Luxembourg, and also worked as a liaison officer in the strategy and planning office of the University of Luxembourg Rectorate. So without further ado, over to you, Sean. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thanks, Pooja, for that nice introduction, and thank you to everybody taking time out of your morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are, to hang out with us and to share your inner goat with us, and to listen a bit about research culture and narrative CVs. The title of this talk, well, it's an interactive talk. There's going to be Mentimeter spliced in all over the place, so keep your phones or devices at the ready. The title we were given, or we've given ourselves, Pooja and I, is Reshaping Research Culture and Revolutionizing CVs through Peer Exchange. So I'd like to talk to you a little bit about research culture, narrative CVs, and how all those things tie together before kind of introducing the PEP-CV platform, which will be run through by Pooja. Yeah, like you said, like Pooja introduced, there's opportunity for question and answer later, but also please put stuff in the chat, in the Mentimeter, as you'd like. Interactivity is welcome. And if you have a question on the slide, I also don't mind being interrupted. So if you just like unmute yourself and ask a question, that's also cool. Okay, let's start with research culture. Research culture is this big, fuzzy, hairy umbrella term that kind of is everything around research. It influences how research is done, how research is evaluated, how research is communicated, how people feel doing research, your career paths, like everything. And it is underlied by kind of behaviors, values, expectations, attitudes, and norms, the ones that are spoken and visual and put out there, and the ones that are not necessarily so overt. It's a very important topic. It's become relevant only not relevant, sorry, it's become visible only a couple of years ago, even though it was always relevant. This definition comes from the Royal Society back in 2017, so 7 years ago, less than 10 years ago, but it's been taking on a lot of momentum over the past years. In 2020, the Wellcome Trust in the UK did this big survey where they said, okay, researchers, what do you think about this culture? And they interviewed many people around the world, mostly UK and Europe, but people around the world. And they said, okay, define your research culture currently. And the word cloud that came out was relatively worrisome. And this kind of made people pause. It definitely made me pause. This is the thing that made me want to get into research culture. And it made us start to think about, okay, what does this mean and what should we be doing? How should we be thinking about research culture? And so a couple other graphs, just to emphasize the data behind this, right? So you see about bullying and harassment, there's 61% of people polled have witnessed bullying and harassment, and 43 having experienced bullying and harassment. And about seeking professional help for depression or anxiety, you have a large percentage, a way too large percentage of people that have either required and seeked and required help, professional help, or would have liked to have help, right? You have almost 50% of people who are receiving help, but or people that need help but haven't yet gotten it yet. And then this also came up in the scientific literature in the last couple of years. You've seen more and more headlines around research culture, issues in research culture, the impact of research culture. So it's something that we should really be thinking about. But we shouldn't only focus on the negative. It's just to kind of frame the perspective. I am an eternal optimist, so I'd like to not focus on the negative for too long and maybe think about what's the ideal, right? The same Wellcome Trust survey asked the researchers, okay, what's the ideal research culture? And the words that came up are really nice. And I think they fit greatly. And this also is the thing that motivates the stuff that we've done around, which we'll talk about, narrative CVs and PEP-CV. Think about these words as we to continue with the discussion: collaborative, supportive, creative, open, fair, inclusive, right? These are important values, I would argue, of ideal research culture. Okay, great. Research culture needs to change. How? And this question was asked as well by Wellcome Trust. And the kind of the main thing that the researchers said is recognition and rewarding of good practices and behaviors that improve research culture. And me being a funder, one of the main ways that we can recognize and reward behaviors of good research culture is through assessment, right? Because assessment is kind of our main lever for handing out research money to projects and to people. But okay, what are the current issues with assessment? Noemi Obert-Bonn, a postdoctoral researcher from Hasselt, and she's also somewhere in the UK as well, Manchester, I think, did this really nice study where she interviewed many people and found that they're the ideals of research success that we think should be done. What is good research? Quality, valid, reproducible findings, collaboration, open science, innovation, transparency, honesty. Some of these words were in that word cloud before. These nice ideals of assessment of what's assessed for research success is different from what is needed for career success, right? Where you need lots of publications, amazing findings, right? Breakthroughs, individual achievements over group achievements, high competition, positive results only. Failures don't matter or hide them. And you want something that's going to go into the media saying this is going to cure cancer, or coffee, I don't know, is the solution to all our problems. And these two things are at odds, and this is the fundamental issue with assessment processes today. So let's take a step back. And as a funder, I have pretty solid understanding, I hope, of how assessment works. At least in how we do things. In assessment, there's usually an application and a CV. And in our mind, the CV is not the thing that should be assessed on its own. The CV provides context for the application. The application is, I had this great idea. I want to do this amazing science or research. And the CV is like, okay, this is why I'm the right person to do this, or this is why my group is the right group of people to do this and what we bring to the table. So this is an important thing to keep in mind about how assessment should work, the ideal of assessment. But let's focus on the CV for a bit, because we're here to talk about narrative CVs. What's wrong with the traditional CV? Metrics, first of all. Metrics are shortcuts. They're not necessarily bad, inherently bad, but they can be used incorrectly. And very often there's too much focus on things that don't necessarily equate with quality. For example, journal index impact factor, is not a measure of quality of a publication. It's a measure of how often the journal is referenced by other articles, right? So it's not a measure of the article or even of the research. It's a measure of the journal. And so a measure of the journal impacting or being a measure of quality for an individual doesn't quite fit. There's a lot of quantitative information, which is, again, not bad, but very often evaluation is difficult, and there's lots of things to evaluate and to compare. And so these numbers are easier to compare and easier to use than something qualitative, right? It's too much to handle, so it's a nice shortcut for an evaluator. And then traditional outputs. Again, science is built on publications right now, which is fine. That's how it's been done. But there's no space in traditional CVs really to show motivation, or what's your vision, or what else have you done in the field, who have you mentored, how have you brought people forward in teams and contributed to your colleagues, or contributed to the greater scientific ecosystem, right? So this isn't there. So the overarching question is, how can we avoid the shortcuts and the biases that come from a traditional CV in evaluation? And so this is what got us thinking, why not balancing all of this stuff, which it's not to say throw it all out. It's to say balance it. It's not, this isn't the only thing we should be looking at. We should also be looking at the motivation and vision of the people, qualitative information, the stuff that's a little bit harder to quantify, but is very important to what comes out in research. And of course, the broader range of experiences and achievements that people have done and have experienced. So that brings us to narrative CVs. Let's start the Mentimeter here. You go back to your digital device. Have you ever written or evaluated a narrative CV before? I hope this works. Okay, it does. Good. So a couple people know. One person's written them. Somebody's done both. Good mentor for PEP-CV. I hope you're a mentor. If you're not, you should join at the end of this talk. Three new mentors or existing mentors. Evaluated, written, cool. 16. So most, there's a strong kind of novice population, which is fine, but there's also a really good amount of people that have some experience. I'll give it one more minute. If you want to talk about your experiences with narrative CVs, feel free to put them in the chat, or if you want people to reach out to you, then join PEP-CV. Okay, so about 30 people, mostly have no experience, which is totally fine, but a good amount, 10, 12 out of 31, that's 30%. A third of people have either written or evaluated or
Sean,
done both.
there
Yeah.
were some people who joined midway, so I'd just like to reiterate that for those who have not used Mentimeter before, maybe just go to the website because there's no QR code on this slide,
Hold
right?
on, I can show the QR code. Well,
Yeah,
oh,
that
no,
one.
I can't. Never mind, I can't.
Never mind. Yeah, if you just go to
Yeah,
menti.com and type in this code, you'll be able to see the slide and enter your options if you haven't done that yet. So we'll give
cool.
it another couple of seconds, maybe, if somebody wants to join in, and then move forward.
Excellent. Nice. Thank you for showing us. There's some like dead pixels on my screen. I see some red dots. Anyways, thanks for participating in the Menti. This gives us a good picture of who we're talking to today, which is always nice to know. Okay, one more Mentimeter. What do you think the point of a narrative CV is? So you have a lot of different options on your screen, and you can kind of put from 0 to 10 what you see as the importance. And when you go through them, you submit that, and then it'll show up on a nice kind of wavy bar plot thing on the screen. Are we trying to get away from metrics? Are we trying to make researchers angry through increased workload? Thank you. Are we trying to recognize more diverse researcher experiences and achievements? Are we trying to reduce bias? I just said it, so that's cheating. Are we trying to fund a broader diversity of people? Are we trying to let people tell their own story? Is there something we missed? Feel free to put that in the chat, or if you type the Q&A in the Menti, you can add it there too. It's always interesting to know what people's reasons are, because there's what we think why we've done it, but then it doesn't maybe always correspond 100% to what people actually think. Good balance here. I guess we're pissing off a few researchers, and to you, I'm sorry, but thank you for joining us in the conversation anyways, and hopefully you'll bring that up in the discussion, because it is important to understand all perspectives, right? If you don't like the concept of narrative CVs, it's not that we should shut you down, it's we should listen, because maybe there's points where we can come to a consensus, or ways that we can adapt the CV moving forward to address your concerns. Mostly people think the recognition of more diverse experiences and achievements and the telling your own story. I agree. I think that telling your own story is really powerful. I was at a meeting where it was told to me, a traditional CV allows an evaluator to fill in the pieces in between, right? To tell the story, build the context based upon the quantitative information that they see. But the strength of a narrative CV is that you can tell your own story. You give the context for your achievements. And that's very, very powerful. Telling stories is very, very, very powerful. If you think about advertising or storytelling or literature, any of that sort of stuff. Cool. Thank you to the 36 people who have joined. We'll continue with the less interactive part. Narrative style CVs, what is it? It's a structured format, right? There's narratives, but at least in I'll show you, there's a bunch of different people that are using it. There's different types of templates, but in general, they are structured. It's not that you just write whatever you want, but questions are asked, and it's standardized between the applicants, right? So your proposal, your CV has the same types of information that other CVs have. It's not that, anybody can put in their publications and awards, but this person's going to put in different types of awards, and that person's going to put in random other things, because there's no kind of structure. They're written descriptions instead of lists. People do add lists, and this is also okay, but the context is allowed in the narrative CV. And then it allows a broader range of experiences, outputs, and achievements, as we've already described before. And again, I want to reiterate and re-emphasize that it's supplementary to a proposal. It provides context for the proposal. Are you the right person for the job or for the research? This is a nice slide from the UKRI, and the idea is that, there's all the stuff that you see and that you can demonstrate in a CV and in general in terms of research, right? Data sharing, talks, publications, awards, increased sales, but then there's all that stuff below the surface, which is vital to a functioning research ecosystem, to a good well-working group or an institute that isn't, or even scientific ecosystem, or the scientific endeavor in general, right? Like peer review panels and committees, but it's not really valorized, it's not really seen. And the idea of a narrative CV is to kind of make that invisible side more visible and more recognized in evaluation. And these slides, of course, will be for everybody later, right? We'll share them, so don't feel the need to copy paste. Or I don't know if that chat has already come in the chat, but we're going to share the slides. Okay, open-ended Mentimeter. How do you think narrative style CVs can affect research culture, right? The good ways and the bad ways. We've mentioned what research culture is, this kind of broad umbrella that is affected by underlying values and norms. And there's CVs, narrative CVs, that allow this broader range of experiences to come to the forefront. How do you think it affects research culture? We can talk about this a little, but I want to prime you by maybe having you put some stuff in here. They won't. Good, okay. I would love, oops, sorry. Up. I was gonna go through the chat real quickly to see if there's anything we've missed. Cool. All right, so we just have one negative comment. Okay. It can be negative. This is fine. The person who wrote they won't. If you'd like, you can add more in Mentimeter, either in the Q&A. It's anonymous, so we won't know who you are, or you can add more here. It would be interesting to hear your perspectives. Good intention, but in practice, it will be very difficult. This is good because I have data later to show you about this. No effect, good. Clarity on who is who. They invite researchers with non-research standard career paths to explain the review in a convincing way, giving a chance to show collaborative works, emphasis on leadership skills rather than metrics, early career researchers, no effect. Okay, we have a fair amount of people in the audience that are relatively, what's the word? Yeah, not negative, but are skeptical of this. A greater gap between more and less talented writers. That's also a good question, a good point. Hold on, let's move to the Mentimeter so I can skim. All right, evaluators spend a few minutes skimming through CVs. Some don't even get to reading career breaks. Yes, I mean, this is the problem with evaluation. We at the FNR have a video that Pooja mentioned in my introduction that we show to all of our evaluators. I can put it in the, if you want to put it in the link, if you search YouTube for balanced, broad, and responsible, you'll find it. If someone wants to look for that and put it in the chat, it helps. It changes how people think. Difficult to change reviewers' opinions on which candidates are excellent. This is important. Excellence. What is excellence, right? This is a word that has very iffy meanings. Benefit. Researchers should focus more on the impact of their work instead of just having many papers. Cool. Nuanced approach and qualitative approach to telling your story, but it's based on language and writing skills. And I would argue here ChatGPT and other large language models can help. If you're not a native English speaker, ChatGPT can help. It can't make your narrative CV for you, but it can definitely help your English or whatever language you're writing it in. Difficult to do? Yeah, it's a change. It's different, right? It's very hard to reflect on what you've done instead of just listing it. Oh, one more comment on the language and writing skills. It's the same for a proposal. A proposal is also written, right? So if you're a good writer, then you're going to have an advantage there as well. Highlight the less exposed hard workers. However, good writing skills can top everything. In this case, somehow the essay should be fact proved by interviewing peer students, colleagues, and maybe you ran out of space. This is a good comment as well. They're all good comments. Writing skills are important, but also for proposals, that's just a general thing. And again, I would argue that ChatGPT helps to balance the scales here. Fact proven, I want to make a very clear statement here. All evaluation is subjective. There are no fact-based evaluations because it's peer review. It's always a person that's judging the information that they get, and they will judge that information based upon the biases that they have, the implicit and explicit ones. So there's no such thing as any objective evaluation, in my opinion. Interviewing peer students and colleagues, this is good. There are certain grants, and I mean, Florian can talk about this, where we at the FNR have introduced a mentee evaluation where we actually ask the person to submit mentees that they've worked with, and then we the funder, interviews them and gives that to the evaluation committee as well. Okay, cool. Excellent responses here. We will save all these responses as well. So this will help in kind of us develop our thinking around narrative CVs and PEP-CV also. Back to the slides. Okay, here's some data. You'll notice a link at the bottom. we have this data is new. It'll be published next week. We have a report that we've done where we've gathered feedback from researchers, so applicants and evaluators for Luxembourgish grants, and we asked them lots of questions around the narrative CV, and we have gathered all that data and made it free for everybody. So the raw data is on this website. The reports are on this website. We've had 2 reports that are ready and done, and the third one will come next Thursday, I think. So keep that website open, and then these graphs also will be online. They're free to share. Use them as you will. One of the questions we ask, I won't show you everything because there's no time for this. We've asked the applicants and the reviewers, does a narrative profile, our narrative CV, better demonstrate skills and experience compared to a standard CV? And you have, I guess, a similar ratio of people in this audience, right? A majority of people that think, of applicants that think yes, and reviewers that think yes. A couple that are neutral about it, that are unsure, maybe that's not going to change anything, and disagree, that think that it's actively negative. But you see that the majority is not against, right? Both on the reviewer's side and on the applicant side. And this is an important takeaway. The issue of, is it harder to evaluate? I didn't show this, the other slide. There's a hand raised. Well, let me finish the slide, then we'll come back to you, Pablo. The data that you'll see next week in the report shows that it does take longer to write because it's probably new and different. So there you see the bar graph. Applicants have taken a longer time to write it compared to traditional CV. But for evaluation, you see here, in terms of time and difficulty, it's more or less the same. You see kind of a standard deviation. It's not statistically significant. We haven't done any tests of there, but I mean, the trend is relatively clear that it's not necessarily completely hard, much harder, or takes much more time to evaluate compared to a traditional CV. So that, I think, is also an important takeaway. Pablo, please jump in.
Hi, Sham. Sorry. I want to ask you this. Do you have data if the outcome will be different using narrative CV versus standard CV? Because you clearly evaluate in a different way, but the final outcome is different or not?
This is the holy grail, right? I mean, it's the answer is not yet, because we've implemented our narrative CVs 3 years ago. So I would argue that there's not enough data to do this analysis yet. And now that we're starting to have enough data, we have to have the time and effort to do it. So we are not doing that, but there are people doing it. The Research on Research Institute, RORI, is looking into this. They have a couple projects running. The SNSF in Switzerland, the funding agency in Switzerland, is doing some stuff on this. There are others doing this because the data is now just starting to be enough. Because of course we want to know if the outcomes are changed, but we can't just change and then assume, then know immediately. We have to wait for the data to come in. My feeling is, based upon what I've seen in terms of evaluations, people talk differently. The reviewers and the evaluators, they use different words. They talk about the narrative CV in the panels. They use words like profile, like their profile, their vision. And they talk about the policy stuff that people have done and the stuff that's aside from just the papers or the actual content of the research that's been done over just the metrics, right? Metrics become less talked about, and people and content become more talked about. I have seen this, but I don't have data. Cool.
Thanks.
Okay. So yeah, no stress. But keep your eyes open for more data. And then the last data that I'll show you is we asked the reviewers, how important do you think it is for your evaluation for an applicant to demonstrate this wider range, right? So not only is it more broad than a traditional CV, but is that even important for your evaluation? And you see 65% of reviewers across all kind of age ranges or career levels, we'll say, think that is important. And 30% are like, oh, this is fine. And only 5% think it's not important. So I mean, this to me is the biggest takeaway of narrative CVs, right? Like, no matter what we're doing, the reviewers think, reviewers are researchers, right? People like you, they think it's important, right? So if it's important, we should be doing it. Okay, so that's the data. Now I want to show you, we're almost there. an international adoption of narrative CV. So you see here, I think there's 13 funders on this slide, including Canada and New Zealand and Chile, right? So around the world, ERC, you have people that are adopting narrative CVs. I have a small group that I work with. We actually asked this question in this chat yesterday, and there's institutions and funders that don't call it a narrative CV or something similar, and that number goes to like 20 or 30 institutions and funders around the world. So I mean, the momentum is growing, which is cool. All of their templates, however, are different, right? And this is important. So it's not a standardized template across all of these institutions, but there are narrative elements, the idea, the principles that I'm talking about in this talk are the same and shared, and the goals. Okay, so we have all these different templates. What's the challenges and opportunities? This is a Mentimeter from a previous discussion I had, a talk, I don't know, a couple months ago, and they asked the question, okay, what's missing around narrative CVs? And you can see there were 29 responses. I only showed some of them here, but you can see that there's a broad range of stuff, and I highlighted the ones that are training and guidance, and examples and structures, suggestions and templates, right? People really want guidance. And I'm sure if I asked you guys the questions, guys and girls, the same question, the same things would come out. But we're here to talk about PEP-CV because the idea is, we've heard you. We hear that you want guidance. We hear that you want training, and we're here to help with that because that's our job. However, what we don't want is to provide templates and examples. Sorry, templates. Yeah, not templates, examples. We don't want to provide examples because the idea of a narrative CV is to allow you to tell your own story. And if you're copy pasting or thinking what's the best narrative CV or what's the narrative CV that's going to get me the money or the job, then you're thinking there's a right narrative CV and a wrong narrative CV, and that's not how it should be. The idea is that your CV is your story, and your story is different from my story, is different from Pooja's story, is different from everybody's story. How you write it is a different thing, right? You can have guidance and help for how you write it, but what you say should not be dependent on what an evaluator would think is right or wrong. And so it's up to us to provide guidance to the researchers to write in this way and to prepare narrative CVs. And it's up for funders and people that are doing the evaluations to train and give guidance to the evaluators to think like this as well. But we think that peer mentoring is the thing that can provide much more benefit than examples. So this is a nice transition. But before we transition towards Pooja's side of the talk, one more question. How can mentoring affect the writing and evaluation of narrative CVs? This is the last Menti that I will ask you. So I'm looking forward to hear what you think. Again, you can talk about the positive effects and the negative effects. Maybe some of you have already experiences based upon your use of PEP-CV. Feel free to throw those in here, or other types of mentoring that you've had, if it's been good or bad or neutral, and how you think that could be, those lessons could be taken to something like narrative CVs. We're really interested to hear your feedback and thoughts here. So we'll give you a minute. Outside perspective on the clarity of your story. Ooh, I like that. Right? It's important to have someone else's view. Focusing on the important parts, so the guidance towards focus. Mentoring is probably the only useful thing for this exercise. Are you talking about, I hope you're talking about narrative CVs and not this entire talk, which is fine. It depends on the experience of the mentor, maybe. I mean, the experience of the mentor that they've had, or the experience of their ability to mentor, because everybody starts somewhere, right? Everyone has the first mentorship experience or first experience as a mentor, and we have to gain that experience somehow. Pointing out strengths, we tend to minimize. That's nice. Support. Outside perspective on clarity and impressiveness. Typically positive. Oh, I'm going to switch to the Menti so I can scroll. Perspective. Mentors are like a preview of the evaluation, right? That's an excellent point, right? Show your stuff to somebody else so they can give you feedback so that you can make your proposal, your CV better. You can see how others see you, for good and for worse. How the mentor and mentee click. Yes, this is important. Very, very important. Finding a willing mentor, yes. Streamlining, supporting, and scaffolding the reflection exercise. I'm very happy that you wrote reflection exercise, because that's exactly what this is. Greatly as it provides outside perspective. A lot of stuff about perspective, which is cool. Help you being in the head of an evaluator. Limited time, high pressure. Doesn't yet. Teaching you how to be clear and efficient. Help you overcome a writer's block. Yeah, that's always the hard part, right? Speaking from anyone who's ever written a thesis or a paper or anything. Can potentially stop you from trying something outstanding and being more average. That's an interesting point, right? How do we make sure mentorship pushes you and fosters you to stand out from the crowd? Are narrative CVs longer than traditional? What if there's a limitation? Good point. We haven't brought this up yet. Typically, narrative CVs, I say they're structured, and they do have a page limit. It depends on the funder. For example, our funder is 2 pages, but that's exactly the point. I'm rambling, but one of the reasons why we were able to implement a narrative CV at the FNR was because we had no template, and people were presenting and submitting CVs of like 20 pages, and our reviewers and panel members said, we're not reading those. This is pointless, because they were longer than the proposal. So we said, okay, let's create structure, and then we took advantage of that to allow these narrative style to throw in. Okay, I believe that mentor and mentee are at the same knowledge level. The researcher's a mentor would be aggressive. So why not a grants manager? So this is good, because I mean, I'm spoiling Pooja's maybe, but PEP-CV allows everybody to join, right? It's not just for researchers. I'm a mentor on PEP-CV, and I'm not a researcher. And there's many others that are mentors as well. If you go to the website, you can see who's a mentor. Helping you to highlight your strengths and minimize your limitations. Cool. So I think there's some support for mentorship here. 19 responses, but many thanks. I think this will stay open, so if you want to add some more, we'll leave it open as we pass off to Pooja to talk about PEP-CV.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks for that wonderful insight and some data. I'd just like to comment on the last suggestion or insights that someone added to the Mentimeter, that saying just because 2 people are researchers doesn't mean they're on the same level. And what do we even mean by level? Because as we just said, that everybody has a unique life story. So even if you consider yourselves at the same level, there's so much we can learn from each other. And not just that, there's a different concept called reverse mentoring, which is also very valuable, where irrespective of the hierarchy you sit on, you could learn from each other, especially from junior members in the professional world, teaching senior members how to lead life, do projects, learn new activities. So I kind of, I've taken a sour thing in that comment, but thanks for sharing your perspective. So thank you, Sean. It's been really nice so far, learning the advantages of mentoring and narrative CVs. And as was also the viewpoint of the crowd here, that it is a platform, or it is an opportunity to tell your story your way. And that is the whole concept behind PEP-CV, peer exchange platform, where you get the opportunity to tell your story your way, without templates, without structure, but tell it how you've lived it professionally and also personally. So okay, I have access to go forward in the slides. So as Sean clearly mentioned, the recognition of narrative CVs in general has been growing. There are more than 15 funding organizations across the world that have recognized and supporting narrative CVs. You get unique experiences of other people's lives using the platform of Pure Exchange. And it's just to reiterate, it's not a tailored to purpose. It's not a copy paste of CVs or templates to maximize your success, but an opportunity where you could tell your professional journey in your words. At PEP-CV, we value the exchange between peers, irrespective of their background. We foster collaboration by doing so, which could support and support your research careers and also construction of your CVs. So as I just mentioned, at the PEP-CV platform, we value collaborations, diversity, inclusion. There is no borders or boundaries. And as Sean mentioned, anybody, irrespective of their career trajectory, career stages, country, affiliation with an organization, there are absolutely no barriers. Anybody who's interested in learning or sharing their knowledge around narrative CVs is welcome to the platform to share that with other peers. So far, the PEP-CV consortium consists of 6 funding agencies, namely NWO, UKRI, SFI, SNSF, FNR, where Sean's from, and Welcome. Marie Curie Alumni Association is supporting the platform, where I, as a community manager, am helping to take care of the platform right now. We also have support from Young Academy of Europe. So, with that said, we're always looking for new funders and institutions to join us, to fund us, to make this platform more and more sustainable. So if anybody is joining here today from funding agencies or think that their organization or the researchers in the organization can benefit from us, please write to us and we'll be happy to share more insights and information with you. Now, how does this platform work? As a mentee, when you register to a platform, you're free to make your own profile. Once you've filled your profile, you can find your potential mentors, you contact your mentors, and then arrange a meeting. As a mentor, when you register as a mentor, you again fill your profile. You have to wait for the mentees to contact you. Then you accept the mentees to your however mentorships you want to carry out and arrange a meeting. But here I'd like to emphasize, once you're on the platform, the onus is on the mentee to contact the mentors. If you don't contact, nothing happens. And as a mentor, you're not able to contact the mentees directly, the mentees have to come to you. So that's an important thing, because I've had some messages from mentors who are like, okay, I joined, what now? Well, the mentee has to take the first step, which is very vital here. So who can be a mentor? For this specific platform, because it is for narrative CVs, if you've had previous experience writing a narrative CV, or if you've evaluated a narrative CV, or if you've had diverse career trajectories and unique paths, you can be a mentor. At the platform, you're welcome to check out our knowledge base, and there are also snippets of videos to guide mentors how to go about being a mentor for narrative CVs. And if you seek further support, please write to us and we'll be very happy to help you. Now, but why be a mentor in the first place? As mentioned earlier, this is a platform where we foster community support, helping each other through our lived experiences of professional and personal life, where you can collaborate peer-to-peer. You can also add this experience of mentorship to your CV, which will further demonstrate your commitment to helping out others and developing individuals. You're part of fostering a more equitable, diverse, and inclusive research culture. And I can bet that we are here because we want to reform the research culture in one way or the other. For mentees, why be a part of the PEP-CV platform? Well, to begin with, of course, you'll learn how to write a narrative CV by peer exchange and peer support. You can get the opportunity to expand your network, and we'll be hosting more and more webinars where we'll have more, I would say, on one-to-one scale interaction with the members in mentees and mentors. You'll learn how to highlight your own strengths and achievements and get a platform where you can showcase the diversity of experience that you bring to research and innovation system. And I'd just like to say again that mentees can and should become mentors. Once you've been through the process of mentorship, you'll be learning so many valuable lessons on not just how to write a narrative CV, but how to interact with diverse crowd coming from different cultures, different countries. There's so much of wealth in mentorship that you will discover, and it's always best to pay it forward to the community. So with that, we'd like to demonstrate for the newbies here who have not been to the platform, just how the platform works. And here we'll have a little role play between Sean and myself, where Sean is a mentee and I'm a mentor. Over to you, Sean.
Thanks. So I've just logged in to PEP-CV. I've already registered, and I want to find a mentor. So I go, this is the landing page as it currently looks, and I go to my profile, and I fill it out. You see there's a bit of a description area and then some other data that you can fill out. And then you fill out where you're from, what domain you're in, what your job family is, not necessarily having to be in research, languages that you can converse in, because it doesn't necessarily have to be English, because many people from different cultures speak other languages. And then here, your career experiences. So this is kind of personal and professional bits that you can use to filter who you look for, and mentors can use to filter who they can best talk to. And you can see there's a very diverse range of things that you can choose from. And then once I filled out my profile, I will go to this next one. I will go to the All Mentors page, and then here you can see a list of all the mentors. And then, well, I have some limitations because I only speak English because I'm a silly American, and I want to learn about things about, I want people who can talk to me about policy because, I'm a funder, and what other things? Oh, and mentorship, because I've done a little bit of mentorship in my life as well. So I look, this filters, there's this interesting mentor, Pooja. So I click on her profile, take a look, and think, this is interesting. I would like to request a mentorship. I push the button, and yes, I'm sure I want to push the button and request a mentorship. And then an email magically appears in Pooja's mailbox.
Yes, thanks, Sean. And so with an email notification, you're able to, right here, go to the platform and the dashboard itself. It shows you that you have a new mentorship request. You go through the profile. If it matches with your experiences and expertise, you're able to accept Sean's invitation or other mentees' invitations to start the mentorship. Over to you.
And then the mentorship happens outside of the PEP-CV platform. We don't tell you when, how many, how often, what you should look at. We give you guidance in the knowledge base that Pooja linked to. But when the mentorship is finished and finalized, you go back to your dashboard and you say, okay, I have this active mentorship running. It was great. She did a good job, but we're done now. So I go and I end the mentorship. As you see, I can also review the mentor and leave a feedback for the mentor, which is always important because feedback is useful. And yes. Oh yeah, and that's it. Yeah. Right? Yeah, okay.
Yes, I'd just like to where are we, Sean? What is happening?
Sorry, here's the slide.
Okay, cool. So yes, it is very vital to press when you're on the platform and your mentorship has concluded, please put finalize or push finalize or end mentorship, because that is also helpful to see in the system which mentorships have concluded. Because as I mentioned earlier, we will be hosting some webinars where we'll be inviting our mentors and mentees who have had the experience to conduct these mentorships. So it'll be a good indicator for us to see how many mentorships have been concluded. And to that, I'd also like to add that many mentoring platforms have this very I wouldn't say restrictive, but structured format of mentorships, i.e. 6 months mentorships or 5 months. With this platform, it is a little bit wild and free range in that sense, because we leave that responsibility and also freedom to the mentors and mentees. Now, that could be a little bit of a nomad's land for some people, and we are here to support you. You can always write to us if you're not hearing back from mentors or not having any mentees approach you, and we'll be able to support you with that. But we're just trying something new. And it is an experience for us as well. So if you have any feedback, good, bad, criticism, we always welcome that. And if you're newbies and our talk has interested you in narrative CVs or mentorship in general, then please feel free to scan this QR code. You can jump onto the web link also that I've posted here, typed here, and you can also email us at pepcv@marycuriealumni.eu. And if you have any questions or feedback, we welcome that as well. And with that, we open the floor to anybody who would like to share their experiences either with the platform itself or narrative CVs in general. The sky is not the limit, or any questions you may have. So the floor is yours, and we open the mic to anybody who would like to contribute. Thank you. feel free to unmute yourself and talk or raise your hand.
There's some questions in the chat, and I've also put the Mentimeter on questions as well. So if you'd like to put a question in the Mentimeter, you can. So maybe there's this question right here in the chat. From Natalia, would you like to unmute and ask the question, or would you like me to read it for you? All right, I'll read it. A number of studies showed that women tend to be far more modest in their CVs than men, using language that may reflect lack of confidence or and associated with hard work rather than excellence or a valuable skill set. Any data on how the narrative CV affects women's evaluations in this regard? Excellent question.
That's my question.
Excellent question. I mean, so I'm aware of this data as well. No data so far, but it is one of the important questions that we are asking. So we are very, very aware of this. I would argue that it's not just the CV itself, but also the how the CV is read, right? Because the evaluation is always two ways. It's the data that's given and then how the data is received or the input is received. So not only do narrative CVs hopefully help to kind of balance that, we as funders and evaluators need to work on the people doing the evaluation and say, look, how do we balance this and make sure that those biases don't come to the forefront? We need to structure our questions differently, structure our the guidance differently, all that sort of stuff. And if okay, so Mashid has a question, then I'll get to the one in the chat.
Sorry, it was a mistake.
Oh, okay, a false hand. Okay, well, thanks for raising your hand anyways. Good to see you. Paula has a question. What if researchers do not have something to contribute for the 4 typical modules? So you're referring to our template and the resume for research and innovation from the UKRI or from the UK template. It's very important to note that we're not asking for researchers to be superheroes and amazing in everything. It's the idea of finding your niche. How well can you explain your niche? So at least in our template, and I would suggest this for others as well, if you can't do everything in the 4, so there's contributions to knowledge, contributions to people, contributions to society, and contributions to the scientific enterprise. If you're better at the science stuff, then focus there. If you're better at the people and society stuff, focus there. It's not about trying to be great in everything, because that's impossible for us. Yeah, there's a question in the Mentimeter. I know that several reviewers, after reading narrative CVs, go to Google Scholar or ORCID to check the metrics. How can we surpass this? Yes, yeah, that's true. One of the questions in the survey, if you go to our data, you'll see that we ask, because we ask for ORCID in our evaluation, and many people go to ORCID, or they tell us that they just go to Google Scholar or whatever. We can't stop that, and we shouldn't stop that, because, well, we shouldn't tell people how to do the evaluation in such a restrictive way. What we need to do, what we should be doing, what we are doing, many of us, is trying to change the importance of that stuff, right? We put the narrative CV in front of the reviewer, and we say, this is what you get. So that's the first thing they're going to look at. So hopefully that primes them in the evaluation, and the ORCID stuff and all the papers, that is supplementary. But also, I mean, yeah, it's a matter of change and time. Hopefully it'll take time to do all this stuff. It'll take time to wean people off of metrics. And this is just one brick that will help to kind of push things forward. Pooja, for you.
Yes, that's actually a great question/comment, and I think that would be valuable. But I think that it's not a place yet open, but I'd say that if you have a active mentorship, you can utilize that to share your CV for review or comment from the mentor. But Sean, any comments on maybe a crowdsource review?
Crowdsource review, that's a very new way of doing things. There are funders that are working on innovative ways of reviewing stuff. Yeah, it's all about experimenting, gathering data, scientific method, right? Oh, I wish I had we're doing actually, I'm in another thing. I'll put a link to a survey where we're trying to gather ideas for cool experiments. I'll put that link in there. But while I'm doing that, Pooja, there's a question in the chat. Does PEP-CV have a place for you to put in the CV for you? Oh yeah, sorry, that's the question you just answered. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, but I mean, talk to your mentor, right? Find a mentor and then share your CV with them. That's the best way to do it.
Yes. Sean, I have a question.
Okay.
From your experience in narrative CVs, would you say that it's only for academia or researchers, or for people who are trying to pivot out of academia, are narrative CVs recognized outside academia as well?
Well, hold on. I put a link in the chat. If anybody has any ideas and they want to change assessment, please put this, fill out the survey. It's one question and share it with your colleagues and friends and everybody. To your question, well, actually, if you think about it, I don't know how many people here have applied in other sectors. You have like right? You have a CV and a cover letter. And the CV tells what you've done, and the cover letter kind of explains your motivation for joining. And in essence, the narrative CV is something in between. So I think if you come from another sector, you can give a lot to people in academia of how to structure your arguments, how to structure a narrative style CV in a way that says, okay, this is why I'm motivated. This is why I want to do this research. This is why I'm the right person for this. And it's just a different way of telling your story.
But are they appreciated and recognized in industry as much as the push is in academia right now?
Depends on the industry, right? I mean, if you think about like kind of, let's say the crazy tech stuff, right? Your Googles and your Facebooks and Metas and all that sort of things, you know, they're looking for people who think outside the box and who think of things in a very different way. They don't want these kind of people that will just put this is all the stuff that I've ever done. They want you to show that you're able to think in a way that is different, that can contribute, that can create added value, or that is a different perspective, as some people wrote in the Mentimeter. And so I think that we need to think about this as well, right? Because in essence, research is about creativity and new things and pushing boundaries. And one way to show that is to show that you can think different. Ooh, in the chat, do we need CVs at all? Very good question. I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. It depends on what we're evaluating. If you're evaluating a person, then you need some way to evaluate what that person's done and the potential of that person to do cool things. If you're evaluating a project or just a research idea, it's arguable if you need a CV at all. Maybe not.
Rano, would you like to unmute yourself and contribute to this? That's very interesting, actually.
Yeah, tell us more.
Sure. I'm in the train, so it's not ideal, but I'm chairing a committee for a big founder, and we evaluate projects. We don't really evaluate person except for early career researchers, but the application is, the project is the most determining thing, really. And I've never really read the CVs of the people who apply for any of these things. I think it's not always super relevant, right? I mean, the only thing, you're making a guess on whether they are capable of delivering the work and or producing some interesting research, but it's really gut feeling often. So I think that reading the proposal is often more informative, and I think it also makes you less biased with respect to the proposal themselves, because we often people in my committee will have comments like, "Oh, the proposal is badly written, but these guys are good, so they will deliver something interesting." But this is ridiculous, right? That shouldn't be. If they are not willing to put the work to write a good proposal, then they shouldn't get funded. So I think that for basic research proposals, we could do without, or maybe this could be broken down into stages. Basically, the founding body looks into whether the applicants are eligible and they qualified to do the job, and then you just then the committee or the panel just looks at the quality of the research that is proposed and doesn't react to the CVs. Have you thought about that?
So what are your main criteria when you are evaluating the proposals? Oh, maybe we lost him. There was some stuttering. I mean, Paula Lopez in the chat responds a bit to this. Do you want to jump in and respond?
Yeah, it's only because when we had few years ago information session about ERCs starting and consolidators, and we have one person from that was for several years in the panels of ERC, and so one that had already got the starting and the consolidator. And even if we disagree, they both kind of agree that the previous background kind of prove they were speaking too much about the input of the candidate, but kind of proof that actually you can deliver a good work or not. I will tend to agree to the previous person saying you have to, maybe you couldn't because some reasons in the previous places where you were, but you are proposing a project that is nice for the institution and that you can do it, but I think it's going to be very difficult that they will not evaluate individually the past background of the researcher.
You raise a very good point, and the point that you raise is what I hear as well, especially from established evaluators, right? That the CV tells you, okay, is this a person that is, are they going to be able to do what they promised? But what do we value in research, right? What do we want? What type of people do we want doing research? Because if we always look for that, how do we get people proving themselves for the first time, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you, continue.
For me, it's tricky. It's like I don't have even myself. I don't know what I think about
You don't know what you think.
about narrative CVs. It's the same. I put the question before about 4 sections because I still have a lot of that because in Portugal they start in the last calls also to put narrative CVs, and even if in the beginning they were telling you don't have to cover whatever, after there was each section have a specific number of characters.
We had this in our first round of the CV. We had each section with characters, and we got lots of negative feedback saying we don't like this, it's too complicated, or we have to be perfect at everything. So we removed that, and we just said 2 pages. You tell us. You put the focus on, right? Like,
okay, but I'm not from a funding agency, so I don't have anything to say. But
send them to me.
But is this? I will see it better if you say you have to cover contributions in these 4 sections and describe as you want in which is your.
So I want to make an important point. There's one question in the Menti, but I want to make an important point here because I think you and Renaud, you are the ones with the power, right? You're the ones doing the review. You're the ones submitting the proposals, right? We as funders, we enable research. So if you have feedback, if you think the CV should be done differently, if you think evaluators should be trained on certain things, give that feedback, right? Because if there's enough researchers giving that feedback to the funding agencies, to the institutions, then hopefully they should listen and at least engage in that communication, the dialogue towards change, right? Because if we just sit and we're like, no, this is fine. We just we're annoyed when things are changed. We're annoyed when there's new things, or there's no dialogue, right? We're just letting stuff happen to us. But we as a research community need to have dialogue to move forward together. So I would suggest really try to give as much feedback as you can, or try to find ways of giving feedback.
Okay, thanks.
I don't know. There's a question in the Mentimeter. Is there a place for crazy geniuses who may be asocial but could bring the science to the next level with this new standard? Maybe. I mean, this is kind of going into this discussion that we're talking about, right? Like, are you judging a person based upon their potential or based upon their ability to deliver stuff already? Good question. Whoever wants whoever put that in, if they want to keep talking, feel free to unmute yourself. There's more questions in the chat. Dora, although Dora is very clear. Anna, do you want to ask the question on mute? You can. Otherwise, I will read it.
Sure, I can ask the question. I just don't
Go
have
for
my
it.
video on because my camera is at a weird angle. So actually more as an evaluator, I still see that when researchers have a really big achievement, you know, in their path, publication in Nature, publication in Science, you're still going to see that stated very clearly, often with, you know, impact factors such and such, right? So now that I'm in more of a advisory position, because I'm a research funding manager, I do prior work. I have a really hard time telling people not to do that, because, you know, it's like, these are the rules of the game. We're trying to make the game more fair, or at least, you know, with more clarity and transparency. But there's still a lot of going around these rules. So this is almost like an ethical dilemma for me as an advisor. Okay, I'm not, it doesn't matter what I do for my own narrative CV. It's just, what do I tell my people, especially when they're junior people and they really have to, you know, cling onto these big achievements that they got. It's very difficult. Do you have any practical suggestions?
Yeah, that's a hard one. You're right. I mean, I still see it too. And there's the carrot and the stick, right? The stick is if your institution is signed DORA, is a member of COARA, Coalition on Advanced Research Assessment, DORA, the Declaration on Research Assessment. There's very clear guidelines. Don't use this. So you can say, hey, look, our institution has signed DORA/COARA. You're not allowed to do this. That's the stick. That might not do much. You can try the carrot as well. Be like, hey, look, you know, we're trying to change the system and engage in the conversation, right? Like, okay, this is important, but what about, you know, ask questions like, what did you do? What was the finding? Why was it so great? How will this impact the future of the domain, right? Try to get them towards giving more input, right? To change what they think about and how they talk and write. And that will slowly work towards, you know, changing things. Because I mean, we have an example of someone in my country that they had a science or nature paper, but the outcome was really cool. Like they were able to increase the efficiency of something. I don't want to like give too much information. They were able to increase the efficiency of something by like 30%, which is like has consumer applications, right? That if you can put it in a way that impacts people and their lives. And you know, something like that might be even more impactful or, you know, story-wise than saying I have a publication in science. But I mean, generally, it's hard, and you just have to slowly try to find ways to change the narrative, change how people talk, change how people think, which is through being supportive and asking different questions. I don't know, what do you think?
I just like to, I don't know, this is bringing up a lot of, although I haven't done active research since 2 years now, but it's bringing up a lot of research trauma/toxicity. I would say that I myself as a researcher have faced in the past, and talking about Nature publication and the weight we give to the quality of science that's published in Nature. I myself can say that after trying to replicate, reproduce a protocol for God knows years, always published in Nature, I couldn't. Until date, without naming names, the lab remains the only one who has ever conducted that, and everybody else fails. So that for me raises a lot of red flags in terms of reproducibility of science and quality. But then at the end of the day, it is a sad fact that, as you were saying, journals, the quality, the quantity of impact factor of journals somehow is representative of a researcher's quality and their ability and their potential, which is just so frustrating. But I think what I find personally even more frustrating is that evaluators are not young researchers. They have seen that since decades. It's not new information for them. I don't understand why it's taking us so long to make an impact and a change where these people are experienced people. They've seen it all and probably experienced it themselves as well in research. So why is it so slow in making that change in the environment? And it's a universal fact. How can it be so rampant and still exist? It's just beyond me.
I agree. I agree. We feel your pain. I think everybody has been there in some way or other, right? I don't know. I think it's a serious issue with the rules of assessment, and it doesn't matter how many formats we go through. It's almost like you cannot get into the minds of evaluators and funders to change this perception they have of what is a good rule of assessment. I know at that point, I kind of this is a whole nother discussion, and then we can close the topic, but I tend to, so I was trained in part in the US, and I tend to think that a more punitive methodology should be put in place. So like if you're an evaluator and in your reports, your whole comment about a PI and or a research team is impact factor this, H index that, et cetera, you should be banned from evaluating for that funder for 5 years, something like that, right? Because I mean, I've gotten that a lot, right? It's also because people put it in there, sure, but I've seen that a lot, okay? I don't know, I'm not sure there's going to be change without, because also the middle career people, who are starting to be evaluators and will be the evaluators of the future, already got selected using these rules of assessment. And I think most of them think that these are okay, these are good, because they were used for them and it worked out for them, right? So I don't know, I'm not sure anyone, in at the top is thinking about these issues, but it is about time. I agree with you. It is about time somebody would put, some serious thought into this. Thank you so much for your input.
One last comment on this, and I think it's a maybe hope for the future, because there's also one question I want to get to in the chat. We all have to play our part. I agree with you with what you're saying. The funders have to change the guidance schemes and what we ask for. The institutions have to do the same thing. The researchers, the people writing proposals have to stop putting that stuff into their application and CVs. And the evaluators, who are also researchers, have to stop thinking that this is the best thing to evaluate. And at the same time, we need to train peer reviewers, which is, I think, another huge can of worms that we need to work on. But I think like community is how we do it, right? Because we all do it together. And I think PEP-CV, to bring it back to the topic, right, is a good place to start these discussions, right? Because we are a community, or we encourage or foster a community where these sorts of discussions would happen, right? And the mentees and the mentors theoretically are in the system, either as evaluators or as applicants or as funders or as policy managers or whatever, right? So like if we build and grow this community, then we grow the amount of peer reviewers and people who are in the system thinking in this new way. So it will take time, but we need to start doing it, right? Anyways, yeah, one question, because Zorana and a couple others said it would be great to discuss some examples of narrative CVs. And I would like to reiterate something that I said in the talk. We do not want to give examples of narrative CVs, because the best narrative CV is your narrative CV. And I would encourage everybody who wants an example of a narrative CV to join PEP-CV. We have the link. I don't know, Pooja, if you want to put it in the chat again. Join PEP-CV as a mentee, find yourself a mentor, and talk, right? We have over 150 mentors, right, from around the world. So already there. So there's plenty of people you can talk to. Pick one or two or three and talk to them and get those examples, or not examples, get the feedback so that you can build your own narrative CV. Don't look for examples, look to write yours, look to write your best narrative CV.
Would anybody else like to unmute themselves and share any experiences around research culture, narrative CVs, or the platform? Is anybody here who's already a mentor or a mentee at the platform? You can raise
I
your
can
hand.
say I registered as a mentor in the beginning, because I'm part of the Marie Curie Alumni Association also. So, and I was a researcher and now a career researcher developer. And the contact I had for now is from someone from a funding agency that they never use the narrative TV yet, and they are thinking how to introduce and changing, but they are also afraid from what happened for some funding bodies, in my opinion, is that suddenly they include in the calls narrative CV, like it's the case of Portugal's funding body without any previous, so with the same structure of the others, and now applied like this, without training for people or without training for referees also for and this is the connection I had. It was more to give my feeling and impression to someone of a funding. So it was kind of a reverse mentoring or whatever. So what Singh was telling about speak to funders, speak and give your opinion. So I can say that there are some funders actually looking for this, for the opinion of the people before going to the change. That I find it was great actually that people think of the process before going for it.
Have they been able to adopt any of your suggestions?
Not sure, because today with this meeting, I remember this was in May, and when I sent actually, I think at that point I sent the report from Luxembourg that it was already released, and I say maybe you can see already some cases, and you can read this review about what they are doing in Luxembourg. But after I didn't hear anymore, so I'm not sure.
That's
Lauren, you want to jump in too? Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Sorry.
hi. Yeah, hi, Florian. Yeah, I'm also registered at the platform. I had now one request, which was not a fitting profile. I mean, I did not feel like I could help a lot. It was not at all related to anything I would do, not even to physics. But yeah, I would say I give regular advice to people. And there's also Vadim now sharing the video, so I'm usually advising Vadim quite a bit, and he's now also registering on the platform. Yeah, and then I have two other researchers, but yeah, this went a bit off the track. Well, they didn't register on the platform yet. What I usually try, this probably you can also see from my answers, I usually try to explain to the people that I mentor that when they submit a proposal, they should really think about the situation of a reviewer. That often doesn't work in your field and so on. So you have to make it easy for them also to understand your profile, your problems that you had, or whatever your advances that you made. Yeah, and then also in a time limited fashion for the reviewers. Also, again, when I'm a reviewer, I have to review sometimes, I don't know, 5 to 20 projects at the same time. And I'm not going to read all the projects in once, right? So the chapters, for example, should be self-consistent. And the same for the narrative CV. It should not be that I read the narrative CV and then I have to understand what you wrote 10 pages before. Because yeah, it may be that, you know, I have lunch, I have some other appointments, and I come back then. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing your experiences. And thanks for being a mentor also. All right, Pooja, do we have any? Oh, there's another question in Menti. How do you measure how the reviewers evaluate the CV? I'd like to get some feedback and see what they got from it after a successful or failed application. This should be mandatory. Very good point. We currently don't ask for feedback on the CV in an evaluation. Yeah, we don't ask for that currently, but it's a very good point. We do give feedback on the application. So maybe this can be then integrated in. We just add a sentence like, you know, the app proposal and CV. That's a very simple fix. Again, give feedback to your funder. Give feedback to your evaluators, right? Tell them you want that feedback because it would help you.
How many, in your experience, how many funding agencies actually give feedback on rejected applications?
Many. Most, I would argue. Like, you get a rejected application and you get at least minimally a conclusion of the panel of like what they thought. Very often you'll have all the reviews as well. It's not everybody, but it's many. But I mean, maybe ask that question to the audience, right? Am I wrong? Or is Luxembourg unique?
Would anybody like to share their experiences on any accepted or actually rejected applications?
Hi.
Hi.
I can share. Yeah, my camera isn't working very well, as you can see. No, my experience is that my funding agency gave me a lot of feedback about the application. It was a successful application. I was totally happy. Not a single word about CV. We recently migrated to research, some kind of narrative CV platform. Not a single word about it, but the most important thing is that, funny enough, they request feedback, or that you say why your applications haven't been funded if you have applied for something, and half the time you get no feedback. But regarding this last question, I find it really interesting saying it's like, if the reviewers don't provide you with any feedback, I would like to see how a reviewer can translate a narrative CV into metrics. That would be a really interesting experiment to see how much, because we are all obsessed with metrics, okay? So that's a reality. We've made a huge effort to go from a 3 or 4, 5-page CV when I was doing my PhD, and 10 years later now, we went to bullet points and now back to narrative CVs. So I would like to see how people reviewing those CVs can translate that into metrics, because our brains have been programmed into metrics for a long while. I would like to see how I evaluate that kind of CV, how I translate that in bullet points. Because that would be a good exercise also for applicants to know, if I write this in this way, this is what the other person is going to get in terms of metrics. Somehow we have to distill the information and make it clear. So I think if you're at the implementation point, this should be something that should be asked to reviewers. And I know it's a lot of work, extra work, but it's a lot of extra work for the applicant too. So it's only just to, balance it out. So that's my comment. But I think it's right. And as a woman, I think it's also right, because it gives you the chance to explain if you have had career breaks or things like that. It's like, what were your contributions? If you ended up being joined first because of maternity leave, okay, just describe what part of the job you've done. So it is necessary. So yeah, thank you for the webinar.
Thank you. Good idea. I mean, write a proposal and submit it, or try to get some funding for it. Why not?
Hands full at the moment.
Thanks, Natalia. We are approaching the end. We've got 3 minutes left for the webinar. Would anybody else like to pitch in quickly? If not, then I'll also put the email once again in the chat in case anybody wants to get in touch later or would like to know more about the platform before joining, or any comments and feedback. So
thank you.
Questions? Any other questions on Menti, Sean? Are we good there?
No, we're good.
Okay, cool. Right, this was nice.
Yeah, thank you all for staying with us for the full hour and a half. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being interested in PEP-CV and narrative CVs. And I mean, as Pooja said, please give feedback to us, give feedback to everybody. Yeah.
Yes, and as mentioned earlier, I mean, we are new. It is an experiment for us as well. So we really appreciate any criticism as well, because we want to improve not just for us, but for the community as well. So thanks everybody for the positive comments. And we hope that you gained some knowledge, information from today's webinar. And if you are a mentor or a mentee at the platform and would like to contribute one-on-one in the upcoming webinars for a roundtable, please feel free to write to us. I'm just putting the email address in the chat. Great. And I'll put the link one more time. Thank you. Lots of thank yous. Thanks for you as well. And I hope you have a good Friday and a weekend ahead wherever you are joining from. All right.
Thanks.
I'm going to stop the recording now.